Good morning and welcome back to StartupCincy Week. Sorry about the slight technical difficulties. Hi again, I'm Kara from SoCap Accelerate, a health innovation startup accelerator in Northern Kentucky. And we focus specifically on health innovation and really trying to make the world a healthier place. So that's where we are today in building this session revolved around wellness and employee well-being. And today we're going to start with Stevie Carr, the founder of Wise Wellness Guild, and she's going to tell us a little bit about her journey.
Thank you so much for having me here today. I'm really grateful to be a part of StartupCincy Week. The ecosystem here in Cincinnati is one that is really exciting and growing, and I really believe that we can be the center of health innovation. And with Wise Wellness Guild, this is really empowering women to step into their place and step into their wellness journey to be able to do and lead these types of endeavors. So a little bit about me and my background. I'm Stevie Gable Carr, founder and CEO of Wise Wellness Guild, a platform aimed at advancing women through whole self wellness. We aim to help women achieve peak performance and avoid burnout. And this has just been an incredible journey for me, going from being a corporate warrior to being a founder here in the Midwest. I was achieving at the highest levels of success, really trying to achieve at, the growing as a corporate leader and gaining awards along the way and being able to travel globally, growing my family and being surrounded by an incredible community of support. But something wasn't right for me. I found that I wasn't feeling connected to my values, and I was truly burnt out. I had an incredible childhood growing up here in Cincinnati, and as I grew and became an adult woman, I realized how challenging life really is. And it's not about balancing things, it's about really trying to find a way to live into your purpose and be decisive about the direction you want to be, being a little bit unapologetic and probably a little audacious. I'm not alone. There's over 3 million women who have left the workforce in the pandemic. 74% of women say that they're stressed. And women who work outside of the home say that they're 23% more likely to feel stressed than anyone else. Whole self-wellness for women isn't just a workforce issue. It's an economic issue. It's an equity issue. We know that when women leave the workforce, they further widen the wealth gap. We know that for every dollar that a white man makes, 32 cents goes to every dollar that a white man owns, 32 cents of that is owned by a white woman. And if you're a black woman or a Latina woman, you own 1 penny of that. Women leaving the workforce isn't going to help solve that issue. At Wise Wellness Guild, we're aiming to shift from work-life balance to work-life integration, helping to support women and minority-owned businesses in the pursuit of advancing women in corporate experiences. What is whole self-wellness, you ask? I get this question a lot. It's certainly not yoga or a smoothie. It's not having that 1 glass of wine in a bathtub that shows that rich white woman at the end of the day. It's about integrating occupational and financial wellness, understanding the role of that in our lives and what that takes to be able to understand the root cause of some of the challenges that are happening in our workforce. It's about understanding that corporations can't solve these issues alone. When you look at our approach to Wise Wellness Guild and how we do this, we look at corporate objectives and understanding that retention and recruitment is a huge issue right now. We're looking at how we can leverage a consortium of small women and minority-owned businesses to help to support corporate strategies and allowing for people to connect more closely to key opinion leaders in their regions. We have the audacious idea that small business and local wellness businesses can truly transform health and wellness in this country. Let's take a look at why. I mean, really, at the end of the day, it shouldn't be surprising. We're just under half of the US GDP. When you look left and you look right at the things and decisions that you're making, you're the average of the 5 people around you. You're more likely to ask your tax person who to go to for your dentist. You're more likely to call up your girlfriend and ask, where's the best place to deliver here in the city? So why wouldn't you listen to these people? And we really believe that this is how we're going to drive more important change for all. We know that if corporations and our communities can invest in small businesses, we know that we can really drive change. If every US household invested just $10 a month, we could redistribute over $9 billion back into the US economy. 68 of every $100 that's made by local businesses actually goes back into the communities. And local business is great for the environment as well. We know that if you invest in local businesses, that we can actually avoid 1 billion metric tons of carbon emissions going back into our atmosphere. There's a few amazing partners that we've had in our 2 years of existence as Wise Wellness Guild that I just wanted to highlight that are really stepping into this space. Fifth Third Private Bank, Paycor, the Christ Hospital Health Network, the Wellness Experience by Kroger. We're fortunate to partner with over 322 businesses across 33 states and 6 countries. It's been magnificent to have the opportunity to connect with each and every one of them, and our growth isn't stopping. We've launched a wellness platform that we call the Wise Wellness Marketplace that is an opportunity to create these consortiums in every state across the country. We're on MVP 3, so we've been iterating. But the idea here is that we take vetted partners and allow for our corporate and consumer partners to be able to check things out and understand that wellness doesn't have to be difficult and wellness can be for everyone. We're really trying to create an incredible platform for women and minority-owned businesses to sit amongst our corporate partners and help support them. We also know that investing in our communities means investing in our entrepreneurs. This one sits so closely to my heart, I can't even stand it. It's the opportunity to understand that as an entrepreneur, we go at this so much alone. And we need to be able to do this together in a way that can help support. So that's what Wise is. We're a platform to help amplify in the marketplace, amplify through content, and help to be able to create those connections and opportunities for corporations. We also know that investing in small businesses, it requires a really deep level of insight in wellness. And so we do this through a couple of different ways. We do this through a 100-point wellness assessment. So anyone, but especially entrepreneurs, if you're a small business member, you're welcome to do this. It's our 100-point wellness assessment that it layers demographic, psychographic, and behavioral social determinants of health data for you to be able to go in and understand your wellness baseline. What's your root issue that's driving that inability to sleep? Is it what you're eating? Is it your stress level at work? Is it your connection to the vision for your life? So that's completely free, and it's powered by Cloverleaf, an incredible organization that you're going to hear about a little bit later today. We also connect with some of our partners to be able to deliver for small businesses like the Christ Hospital Health Network. You can call Easy Care Concierge and they will put you in touch with any health and wellness resource in the entire city. This is completely free of charge, but we're just trying to make investing in yourself easier. So you can pick up the phone, talk to Nurse Janet. She's amazing. She's like your best little great aunt on this earth. And she's incredibly knowledgeable about so many different things in health and wellness and beyond. So what I'm asking you to do today is just consider a couple of things. If you are an entrepreneur or a startup, I encourage for you to think about your why. Why are you connecting with the work that you're doing? What is the work that you're doing and how are you achieving it? But also, how are you investing in your whole self-wellness? How are you taking care of yourself so you can care for others? If you're an investor or someone interested in investing in the startup community, like a corporate partner or someone from venture capital, I highly encourage for you to consider what social impact looks like. It doesn't always have to be about, investing billions of dollars. It can be about just making better choices and looking at how the businesses that are in your backyard are truly the ones driving change. Thank you so much for having me here today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Stevie. I love that you decided to really take a leap and build a business based around women's health. It's truly needed, and it's a space that I love to see you in. I know that you used to have a corporate background. I would love to learn a little bit more about that leap you took from corporate to startup, and what do you think your biggest challenge was in that?
Sure. So I think that my leap from corporate to startup, I learned so much about myself and really what I'm driven by. I love to lead and I love to grow people. But what I have found in growing a startup is you can't always have the ability to grow your team along the way. It's about finding some people who are truly experts and being able to put them into those roles. And I think I really took that for granted when I was at Procter & Gamble. I mean, I was surrounded by, I have the most incredible team now with the most incredible heart, but it was really about finding what they were really good at and letting them loose versus trying to train them for something else. And I would say that the other thing that I really learned is that I can tend to be somewhat of a perfectionist. In my background, I'm very data-driven. I like to have all of the information at hand. And part of the challenge with a startup is it requires iteration after iteration, and you will never have all of the information that you need. So much about being a female founder, one of the biggest gifts that I feel like I have is that I go from intuition. And I feel like that's something that has really paid out for me whenever I feel like it's not right. And every time that I've gone after something that has gone against my intuition, it has failed so miserably. And I have found that there's no amount of data or science that I can put behind that as a founder now, that I've really had to let loose some of those constructs that I had as a corporate individual. I think that the third thing for me is just learning to be okay with this discomfort of not knowing. You aren't going to know what's going to happen even in the next, I used to work on 5-year glide paths, 10-year glide paths at P&G, and not even knowing 6 months. I mean, in the matter of 2 months, I went from a brick and mortar concept that was going to have a clubhouse to having nothing because of a global pandemic. And that pivot, that I realized that about myself, that I'm very much a fighter, roll up my sleeves, just go and try new things and iterate. And I'm really proud to say that, I really feel like that's how I kind of knew, that was my badge of honor when I left corporate America, that I knew, okay, you're supposed to be here. You're not an imposter. You're not a fraud. Like, you kind of figuring it out as you go. So I feel like after 2 years, I'm working my way through how to maybe know how to talk corporate speak and language and understand their needs, but also being able to translate that to support other people that maybe didn't have that background and experience.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Stevie. I think you're a true champion in seeing what it's like to truly take that leap. And I think you're right. Focusing on your intuition is always going to be the best way. So trust your gut, guys.
Yes.
Great. Thank you, Stevie. So up next, we have Dr. Angelica Hardy from the American Heart Association, and she's going to be talking a little bit about the problems that are facing the world now and with cardiovascular problems, and how minorities are a big gap in this research. So without further ado, I would like to transition over to Dr. Angelica Hardy.
Good morning. My name is Dr. Angelica Hardy. I serve as Vice President of Health Strategy at the American Heart Association. And I'm excited to be here today to talk about something personal, but also something that is actually impacting a lot of us today around the world, and particularly women. So you may have heard of the American Heart Association, and you may have heard of Research Goes Red, or obviously the color of my blazer today, which we often wear to promote heart health awareness. Research Goes Red is our an awareness initiative focused on getting more women involved in cardiovascular research. It's specifically important to me, and specifically this year of my life, as I tell you my why and my story related to cardiovascular health. 30 years of age is typically a milestone for everyone. I celebrated my 30th birthday a couple months ago, And in my family, it's a huge milestone for a couple reasons. When my mother was 30 years old, she was pregnant with me. And at that time, she was so excited that she was having a girl. And in that time, she got to her third trimester when she found out that she had cardiomyopathy. In that time, she ended up being bedridden, and she had to have her heart monitored until I was born healthy on June 10th of that year. She was so excited, but unfortunately, we did not get to meet when I was born. My mother had to stay in the hospital for another 2 months in order for them to continue to monitor her heart and to make sure that she was healthy enough and strong enough to take care of her daughter. Thankfully, my mom did come home, and she celebrated her 60th birthday when I celebrated my 30th. Unfortunately, there's another story in my family that wasn't so successful. At 30 years old, my Aunt Ramona, affectionately known as Mona, had a few children. I actually have tons of cousins, actually. But she suffered the similar fate with cardiomyopathy in many of her pregnancies. After she was treated and supposedly cured from a cardiomyopathy complications. Unfortunately, 6 days before her 31st birthday, my Aunt Mona didn't wake up. They said that the complications from pregnancy and cardiomyopathy impacted her heart too much, and she died from heart failure. I often think, what if? What if at 30 years old with my Aunt Mona, was there enough research? Was treatment right? Did she have the right diagnoses? Unfortunately, we don't know that from years ago, but I'm here to try to change that for me and my community. 30 years does not have to be the statistic of when women have heart complications in my family. And I hope that the Research Goes Red initiative helps that. Specifically, heart health and actually heart research, specifically cardiovascular health research, has never really represented women. Heart disease is often known as an old man's disease, and recently we realized that 1 in 3 women actually die from heart failure or heart disease. We specifically have to examine how this happens, how our mothers, our sisters, the daughters are impacted by cardiovascular health, and how we can change that. Research Goes Red is just that. We're working to specifically identify what treatment, risks, symptoms, and diagnoses we can further examine to help women in our community. Historically, we have only represented a small percentage. 30 years ago, it was actually around 10 to 15% of us represented in cardiovascular health. In 2020, we are now at 38% of women actually represented in cardiovascular clinical studies. But that's not enough. That's even less for women of color. So we still have much work to do. With the generous support of BI3 Foundation, we are working to address this specifically in the city of Cincinnati and Hamilton County. Unfortunately, our maternal mortality rates are poor, and we are really working to address both maternal morbidity and maternal mortality so that cardiovascular disease is not the number one killer here in our community and nationwide. We are specifically doing a study on cardiovascular health and the identification of how reproductive and cardiovascular health correlate with one another. We want to identify why nature's stress test, which is often what pregnancy is referred to, has taken so many mothers from their family and how we can change that. I took the survey, uncannily, in the 30th year of my life, where this is extremely important. I've never told the story about how this year of 30 has really impacted my family, but I feel like it's kind of fate, right? I'm recruiting for something that has impacted my family so greatly. We have to identify how we can address this issue. Dr. Mariel Jessup, who's the Chief Medical Officer for the American Heart Association, stated that women's first interaction with the healthcare system is actually during pregnancy, their first major interaction. And often that is the time where we identify underlying issues, complications, and things of that nature. But unfortunately, the next time women see healthcare professionals is often when they've had a heart attack or stroke. That is a huge gap from when women are in childbearing years and have their first visit to when they are suffering from a cardiovascular event and hopefully not having their last visit. My call of action for you today is to help us. Help us tell your mother, your sister, your friends, your aunts to be a part of this research study locally. With the generous support of BI3 Foundation, they have helped us invest specifically to identify what we can do here with our healthcare providers, with our community partners, with our neighbors, to figure out how we can address this issue locally. We have done a lot of work in this. We've worked with a lot of local community organizations. We've sent this QR code. You may have seen it on Facebook and Instagram recently as we've identified our digital recruitment. But when you sign onto this page or send the QR link to your family and friends, please tell them your why. I always think, what if my Aunt Mona was here today, and what if I actually had pictures of my mom when I was first born? You always see those smiling videos or pictures when you're first born that I don't actually have, unfortunately, because of cardiovascular events that have run in my family related to pregnancy. So identify your why, send this to someone you love, and help us really engage in research in our community. Help us better understand the impact of reproductive health and what it has on women's health in our community and our heart by taking our survey today. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Hardy. Thank you for sharing that intimate story with us. It really touched my heart, and I hope that no one else out there has to deal with, having a baby and not being able to be there with it in those first moments of life. I would like to ask you, speaking about cardiovascular health, what are some everyday ways, our audience can pick up and do to really improve their cardiovascular health?
Yes, so I can tell you a lot of ways, but I think one that we don't speak about immediately, and I think it's going to be my first one for a reason, would be stress. So stress is so important. It's something that often we don't measure effectively because we all show signs of stress very different. But as we continue to examine maternal health and as we continue to examine the correlation between that and reproductive as well as cardiovascular health, stress continues to rise. How do we identify how we're managing our stress on a daily basis, how we're making sure we are taking care of ourselves? And it goes right to what Stevie had mentioned earlier, like how are we making sure that we're managing our work-life balance, our family, or as Stevie mentioned, integration, which I will start using. But that is so important. We often talk about eating healthy, being physically active. All of those are so important. But if you really start to think about how we work on ourselves, how we manage stress, how we eat healthy, and how we really identify how we can think about our cardiovascular health actually at an early age. That's really, really important as we start to examine and really address our cardiovascular health.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you being here and letting us know, really the problems affecting Black women in this day and age, and, how we can take some steps to really reinvest in our cardiovascular health. So moving on, we're going to move to our next speaker who holds a dear heart space in my heart. He graduated from SoCap Accelerates cohort and really built a business based around women's health and really being able to find a doctor easily. I think a lot of African-American people can attest that it's not as easy to find a doctor that looks like us. So without further ado, I would like to introduce Dr. Phil Cunningham from Yama Health, and he's going to tell us a little bit about problems he's trying to tackle.
Thank you. I'm really excited to be here. And to be honest, I do wish that I was a doctor. It would make my name that much cooler, and I probably would get a show shortly thereafter. But I wanted to start this conversation actually with the argument that I had with my wife yesterday. You see, last night we were having a conversation about how we should start this particular message, right? And we started to argue about, well, we weren't arguing, we were just having a really tough conversation, and we spent about 18 minutes trying to figure out what would be the best way to paint the perfect picture of what health is like here for African Americans in America. And I lost that argument. As a matter of fact, I lost it, it was for a good reason. Because instead, I want to challenge you the same way that my wife challenged me to think about the statistics not as a means of woe, but as a tool to unlock an ecosystem of health solutions. You see, last year, I started working on Yama Health. And the reason I started to work on Yama Health is because I looked at the research that existed and found that African Americans are 2 times more likely to go to the emergency room for primary health care needs. And what does that mean for an African American? What does that mean for the patient? You see, the emergency room is essentially built for triage. And the triage is ultimately to do one of 2 things: either provide that person with an opportunity to get checked into the hospital, or to ultimately create a space for them to get checked out of the hospital. But what that means for the person, though, is that what potentially may be a much larger, a much bigger issue for them may go unchecked because they haven't had the opportunity to get checked at a deeper level, because they're only getting checked at this triage level. What that means, though, is that most African Americans, people who are going to go and check into the ER, find themselves in a space where they are looking at their doctor only for emergencies, or considering their doctor to be no good. Also, here's another fact. Did you know that 22% of African Americans feel like they have no choice in who they see as their medical health care provider? To put a point on this, that's about 9 million people across these United States who feel as if they don't have a choice on who they can share their deepest, darkest fears, problems, issues, and concerns with. And to me, that's a big issue. That's something that we are trying to make sure at Yama Health doesn't continue. And the reason that this is important is because there are so many people across these United States who are looking at their doctor as if there's a person who can't provide them with real solutions. I was having a conversation the other day with the VP over at ProMedica Health, one of the largest health systems in Northwest Ohio. And he came to me and he said that, Phil, we work in the business of trust. Trust is our currency. And I realized that if trust is the currency of the medical system, then many of the people that you are looking to serve in the African American community do not think that that currency is worth anything. And so my goal in developing Yama Health was to be able to create a space where we can, 1, develop a trusting relationship between a patient and a doctor, and 2, make it so much easier for African Americans or people of any complexion, color, or creed to find a doctor who is African American. But I say all of this to not just paint a picture of sadness or to paint a picture of us not being able to find real solutions. I say all of this because ultimately what I have found is that this community is a community of individuals who have the ability to be an addressable market that we have never really taken a look at. And so what I want to do through Yama is make it simple, make it easy for more African Americans to find a doctor. Why is this important to me? This is the hard part of this work for me. So in 2019, my wife and I were pregnant. This is going to be my first son. And my wife, who is the strongest person I know, was actually on a stage like this, presenting. She was talking about turning young people into global citizen scholars. She was there to talk about a time where she went to Prague and she shared her very first opportunity to teach global citizens. And I was there, I was in the crowd, and I was watching my wife. And what I realized, maybe 20, 30 minutes into the conversation, is that my wife's voice shuddered. And I was like, we're a little bit too late to be nervous. We're a little too far into this conversation for you to be afraid. I knew at that moment that something was wrong. What I found out later is that my wife was actually, at that very moment, having contractions. 3 hours later, my son was born, and he didn't make it. The thing that bothered me the most about this, though, is that when we made it to the hospital, my wife was admitted through the emergency room. We were actually carted to 2 different hospitals while my wife was in the middle of contractions. And as my wife was beginning to have my son, the doctor wouldn't let me into the room because he said, baby fathers are not allowed in the delivery room. Now, we've been married for 4 years. I wear my ring everywhere. And at that moment, I was also wearing my ring. And I realized that I was experiencing racism inside of healthcare. So even as I pushed past this person, even as I saw my wife in the most pain that I've ever seen her in her life, and she just fought through, I realized that this is unacceptable. The facts are this: African American women die at 4 times the rate of their counterparts when giving birth. 4 times the rate. What's even more concerning is that when that same African American woman has a college education, it is 5.2 times the rate. Let that sink in for a moment. So what do you do when you go and do the research and you find out that African American people are living in a perpetual pandemic state? And the people that are supposed to help them, the people that are supposed to save them, the people that are supposed to provide them with solutions and resources aren't there for them. As a matter of fact, they feel like the people who are trying to save them put them in a worse space. When I think about Yama Health, that is the reason that we were created. Because I didn't want to see more women die because they didn't have a good relationship with their doctor, because they were afraid to have real conversations with their doctor. And the thing that I challenge all of you who are watching this now, the entrepreneurial community here in Cincinnati, I encourage you to begin to create solutions for this system that currently is broken. Yama is just one part of a much larger ecosystem that can help save lives. And not only will it help save lives, it'll probably make money too. If you were to just simply look at the research, because I'm a researcher, if you were to simply look at the research, you'll find that hospital and healthcare systems run on razor-thin margins. As a matter of fact, in 2020, the median operating margin for a hospital was 0.5%. The year before it was 2.4%. The year before that it was 6.4%. Did you also know that the inequities that exist inside of hospital systems and healthcare systems actually cost hospitals $93 billion per year? And that's simply because of inequities. That is a huge opportunity. That is an addressable market. And what I want the entrepreneurial economy, the entrepreneurial ecosystem to do is to go full force into this space and create as many possible solutions as you could think of. What can you do with technology to solve this issue? What can you do with technology to be able to create solutions that will not only help African Americans, but will help all people? Because the equity doesn't just stop with black people. The inequities don't stop with black people. They don't even start with black people. They start with women. They start with different genders. They start with ageism. They start with all of the different isms. Now the question becomes, how can we create solutions for this space? Again, I challenge you, because it's a market that exists, that is needed, that needs solutions. Let's create this ecosystem together, entrepreneurs. Let's save lives. Let's help people. Let's build. Thank you.
Wow, what a powerful, powerful message we just heard. I know that I'm always touched when I hear Phil's story, and I hope that you guys were too, and you guys can see how much of a problem this is in the Black community and how we really need some innovative solutions to try to solve them. Phil, it's known that patients receive better health care when they can advocate for themselves. But I know a lot of people don't know what that looks like. Could you give us a brief explanation on, what advocacy could look like with your doctor, or how to build that relationship to where, when you're in an emergency situation or in a health crisis, that you can really relay your problems to your doctor?
Yeah, so that is actually a really great question. One of the things that I think that a person can do right off the bat is to educate themselves. And when I say educate yourself, I don't say go on to Google and start Googling everything as it relates to whatever it is that you feel. What I would encourage you to do is to begin to have conversations with your doctor about the real symptoms that you're having. Whether that doctor is black, white, purple, or green, I would encourage you to have the courage to ask the questions and be uncomfortable in that particular situation. If you feel like, and this is something that happens all the time, and part of the other reason that I started Yama Health was because there was a research study done in 2018 by Stanford University that showed when African Americans had African American doctors, their social determinants of health went up by 130%, right? But what happened is they found is that the reason that existed is because they were having very real conversations with their doctors. Mm-hmm. So what would happen if you just had significantly more real conversations with your doctors? If a doctor tells you, and this happens all the time because doctors are strapped, there's a million things that they have to do, right? But sometimes we'll get an answer and we may not understand what the answer actually means. And so we'll just slough it off and say, it must not be that important because I don't understand it, right? But what I would encourage people to do is say, hey, I don't get it. Explain it to me like I'm a 4-year-old. Because what you're saying to me right now is not making the sense to me. I would encourage people to ask questions. I would encourage people to, once they begin to ask questions, say, what can I do about that tomorrow? What should I do about that 30 days from now? What can I do about that 60 days from now? I would also encourage you to develop relationships with specialists and ask your doctor to send you to specialists after you have a conversation about a specific issue. Because what usually happens is that your doctor will say, okay, there's a few things that are going on here. Take a Tylenol and go home, right? But what you need to do is begin to ask, like, so are there other things or other solutions that we're not discussing in this particular conversation that we could potentially be having? Is there someone else that I should have a conversation with about this particular issue?
Great. We have a little bit of extra time, so I wanted to ask, how can people find out more about Yama Health, and give us a little bit of a rundown of the platform and how it works?
Yeah, so Yama Health, you can actually find Yama online. It is JAMAA health.com. We actually just launched our website, so I'm really, really, really excited about that. But if you go to yamahealth.com, you can find the application in the top right-hand corner. You can just click the link and actually go and use the application. It is built simply for individuals to be able to go into the application and find a doctor by location, by specialty, and also just even by gender. Every single person on the application has been vetted. So all of these doctors, there will be no fraud or anything like that. Like, we take a lot of time to sanitize all the information that goes onto the application. I spend hours every week going through the application, making sure that all the doctors who have put their information in are actual doctors. Because again, if the currency of healthcare is trust, then it is important to make sure that every doctor that is submitted onto the application is an actual doctor. In addition to that, we have also created a space for doctors to submit their own information. We'll do our vetting on the back end. Also, another thing that I would encourage everyone to do is that if you do have an African-American doctor, or if you know an African-American doctor, I would encourage you to submit their name to the Yama Health application. It will be awesome to get as many doctors as we can. There's about 45,538 African-American doctors in the United States. My goal is to get at least 80% of them onto the application so that it'll be really easy for any person to find a doctor across the country.
Thank you so much for that little rundown on Yama Health, and I hope that anybody looking for a doctor is going to check out this platform and really be able to quickly find some help in a specialty field.
Awesome. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. So next up, we have Dr. Bailey Bryant, who is also a SoCap Accelerate alum, and we love, love, love her platform as well. She's going to talk a little bit about burnout, what that looks like, and how you can advocate for yourself in burnout situations as well. Without further ado, I'm going to introduce Dr. Bailey Bryant.
All right. Thank you so much, Kara. So let me set the stage. I'm 28 years old. I just graduated and became Dr. Bailey Bryant after years of hard work and dedication. I finally got my license to practice psychology, and there was an opening available for my dream job. Now, like many of you who are probably kind of type A and probably perfectionists, I'm the type of person who has had my life plan mapped out for years. So I knew I wanted to be a psychologist when I was 13, and I've been on the straight and narrow ever since. And I knew as soon as I started graduate school that my path was to work in inpatient psychiatric hospitals. That was the goal. So I took all the right classes, I did all the right training experiences, and as soon as I got my shiny new license, I applied for my dream job, and you know what? I got it. Oh my gosh, it felt so good. Everything was lining up. I started my dream job. I got into my cozy office with my window, and life was good. I was going to work there for the next 32 years of my life before I retired with a nice little pension, and my career was set. Now, you can probably guess from the title of the slide in front of you, this is not where the story ends. So about 6 months in, I'm starting to feel kind of drained, kind of stressed. But, it's a high-stress environment. There's a lot of chaos. Sometimes your safety gets threatened. And as a perfectionist, I put a lot of pressure on myself to do things just right. So I just figured maybe I needed to give myself a little bit of grace, and I would settle in. Right? I was a newbie doctor. It takes time to get used to this. But then a year in, I feel the drain getting more intense. And the image that came to my mind was like a sink that was filled with water. And for everything to be operating right, you had to have so much water in the sink. And from the surface, it looked like everything was holding steady, but at the bottom, underneath it all, there was this drip. There was a leak. And my energy was very slowly leaking out. So I figured, you know what, maybe what's missing is some self-care, and everybody's talking about yoga, so I'll start doing yoga. And like most perfectionists, I jumped in with both feet. I'm doing hot yoga 5 times a week at 5:30 in the morning. I'm getting my vinyasa flow on before I go to work to try to get my mind right. And you know what? That helped. It was like pouring a cup of water into that sink, and it raised my levels temporarily, but the drip was still happening. So now I'm a year in to my dream job, 31 years to go until retirement, and I figured, okay, maybe I just need more self-care. Let me start journaling. So pouring a little water in, but still my levels are draining. And now I'm getting a little more cynical. And I'm feeling a little bit more negative. And I'm starting to spend more time outside of work, thinking about work, talking about work, recovering from work. So I add in meditation. Similar result. A little bit helpful, but still the drain continued. So I add in essential oils. I smelled great, still stressed. So then I thought, well, maybe it's time to see a professional. So I go to a therapist and I say, Doc, I'm in my dream job. Life is exactly like I planned, yet I'm still not feeling good. Help me fix it. Maybe I'm looking at all this wrong. Help me look at this right. And he said, Bailey, you're telling me that you're taking good care of your body, you're sleeping well, eating well, you got good social support, you got hobbies. Everything outside of work is going well. All of the problems seem to stem from this one part of your life. I said, yes, exactly. I'm glad you get it. Now fix it, please, because I've got 31 years to go. And he said the thing that I was really hoping was not the truth, but I knew deep down inside, was that I needed to quit my job. Oh my gosh, if any of you are like me in that you have your plans and you have your goals and you have your checklists and deviations are difficult, you can probably imagine that this was a tough moment because he was right. My burnout had gotten to the point that all of my time outside of work was spent recovering from work, thinking about work, preparing for work. And when I was at work, I was not performing up to my normal levels. My attitude had taken a hit. My focus had taken a hit. Now, the moral of this story is not that if you are experiencing burnout, you must quit your job. For some of you, maybe. Maybe that's your answer. For me, that was mine. It was like I was a desert plant that had been planted in the rainforest. There's nothing wrong with being a desert plant. There's nothing wrong with being in the rainforest, but if you are planted in the wrong environment, you won't thrive. So there were some rainforest plants in that rainforest that were doing great, but I could not do great no matter how much self-care I piled on. And believe me, my routine was pretty intense. So why am I talking to burnout about why today? Why now? Why is burnout everywhere on LinkedIn and Facebook and social media? What even is burnout? So burnout is more than just stress. We all have stress. Burnout is when we have so much chronic workplace stress that we're not able to successfully manage, that we go beyond that point of being kind of energized with our stress, because most stress is kind of energizing and agitating and motivating, even if it's not in a pleasant way. But it's past that. It's when we feel very depleted and exhausted. It's when we're feeling more distance from our job, more negative, more cynical, and we're just not performing up to our normal levels. This is a problem for employers, for employees, because when we're burnt out, we use more sick days, tend to come in a little later, leave a little earlier, produce a little less or at a lower quality. We tend to impact our coworkers because that energy is just kind of infectious. And right now, burnout is affecting the majority of U.S. employees. So a survey that was done by LinkedIn, this is in 2021, Indeed, of 1,500 U.S. workers found that 52% are experiencing burnout. And this is up from pre-pandemic levels, where 42% of us were experiencing burnout. Still a problem, but now it's the majority. Another survey done by the Conference Board, also in 2021, of 1,800 U.S. workers found that 73% were significantly concerned about their mental health, and their primary stressors were workplace stress and burnout. So I was curious, in our local startup ecosystem, what's it look like for us entrepreneurs? Because our lives can look really different. You know, as an entrepreneur, we often have a bit more control over what we do. I won't say we necessarily work shorter hours, but what's it look like for us? So I sent out a survey to our local startup community. Now, granted, the responses were significantly less than 1,500, closer to 23. And the majority of the respondents were entrepreneurs. And one of the questions was about common signs of burnout. 74% of us are experiencing fatigue, and about half of us are struggling with our sleep and our focus and diffuse health issues like headaches, stomach aches, backaches, neck aches, and we're struggling with motivation. We are subject to it too. And it hurts us. It hurts our quality of life. It hurts our relationship outside of work. It's a struggle. So what do we do about it? There are a lot of different variables that contribute to burnout, and not all of them are just being a desert plant that's planted in a rainforest. Now, if that is your situation, perhaps a job change is in order, but there's other things that contribute too, and other solutions that you can put into place in your life. So what are some of the things that hurt, that make us more vulnerable to experiencing burnout? Well, some workplace things, and these are things that a lot of the survey responses indicated in our local community, are feeling like we don't have control over our work. Or we're doing good work, but we're not really getting recognized for it. Or our work is not challenging. Or the environment is very high pressure. Now, if this is the case, maybe this is an opportunity to make some changes in your work day. If you are an entrepreneur and you have full control over what you do, that is great and also difficult because it means changing some habits. If you work for somebody else or with a team. Maybe it's time for some hard conversations. Guys, what we're doing right now is not working. We've got to change this. It's going to be better for our bottom line. It's going to be better for our workplace satisfaction. It's going to increase the likelihood I'm going to stick around for a while. Let's have a conversation. If you have those conversations, if you try to make changes, and it turns out that you are simply planted in the wrong environment, then maybe it's time to consider a new environment. But maybe the problem is more feeling like you don't have enough support outside of work, fun things to do, or you've just got too many responsibilities and not enough time to do the fun things, then maybe it's some changes with what you do with your time outside of work. Habit changes are not easy, but if you have these things to buffer against the stress, it is certainly going to protect you against the risk of burnout. Or maybe it's some other lifestyle things. You know, when we don't sleep enough or well enough, when we don't take good care of our bodies, of our health, when we don't give ourselves time to relax our mind, that makes us more vulnerable too. So maybe it's lifestyle changes. Or maybe we've slipped into the type of mindset that really makes our work difficult because we've put on those negative glasses that just color everything we look at through a negative lens. And you know, if you've ever been in that place, that once you're in that mindset, it can be really hard to break because whatever you look for is what you're going to find. And if you look for problems in a workplace, you will most certainly find them. So perhaps a shift in mindset, reminding yourself what is meaningful about your job, exerting control over the things that you do have control over. There are so many different variables that impact our burnout, and so many different things that can help us. So what I'd like for us to do for the next couple of minutes is an exercise to just slow down and look inward and get a better sense of, for each of us individually, what might be contributing to our stress, or if you're feeling burnout, what might be contributing to your burnout, and what we as individuals can do to try to make some shifts. So if you've been multitasking up to this point, if you want to give yourself a few minutes to just focus your attention, maybe you close whatever windows you have open or silence your phone and just settle in for a moment. And if you're new to meditation, that is okay. Just hang in there with me, and we'll treat this like a little experiment. We'll just try with an open mind and see what happens. So get yourself in a nice, comfy position, and we'll just bring some awareness to the breath. Not trying to change it, but just noticing. And by simply noticing the breath, you might recognize that it starts to slow down just a little bit. So just be aware of what comes up in your mind, in your body, when I ask the question of what are your sources of stress? And you might have specific images coming up in your mind, maybe words. If nothing pops up, congratulations. And as these things start to enter into your mind, maybe some of them are the things that I mentioned a few moments ago. Just be aware of any shifts that happen in the body. So sometimes when we think of our stressors, we start to feel those symptoms of stress. Maybe in our heart rate or our breathing. Maybe some tension or pains in the body, and that's okay. Just note them. We're just being aware of how these things can impact us, because sometimes we don't take time to slow down and check in. So let's take a couple deep breaths, maybe try to shake off any of the stress that just got built up in the body. And now, we're going to take a little trip into the future and imagine an ideal work day. So there is some future day. I don't know exactly when. But a future work day where you do feel balanced and you do feel energized and you do feel focused and recognized and rewarded. So when you wake up on this ideal work day, what's it feel like? What's it feel like to open your eyes and have a day to look forward to? Or maybe on this ideal work day, you wake up and your first thought is not about work. Oh, how nice that would be. As you climb out of bed, what would your morning routine look like on this ideal day? Would there be some movement, a cozy cup of coffee, breakfast with somebody that you love? As you transition into your workday, where would you be working? Is it from home or an office? Maybe someplace else? What sort of tasks would you do on this ideal day? What type of people would be around you? How high would your energy be? Would there be some breaks? Maybe a long lunch with a friend? And as this workday winds down and you transition into your personal life, imagine how seamless that transition could be, where it's easy to switch out of work and into just being a person. What would you do with the rest of the day? You could do anything you want. And as you lay your head down to sleep after that ideal work day where you're balanced and you're focused, imagine how easy it would be to drift off to sleep instead of having a busy mind. So this day that you've just imagined, this day exists somewhere in the future. And now imagine that there is a path that connects you, where you are right now, to this future ideal day. And this path is very real. And each step on this path gets you one step further from the stresses of today and closer to that ideal day. So what is your first step? Is it sitting back and really reevaluating what needs to change, what has to go? Is it having a hard conversation? Is it picking up yoga? Is it a vacation? Now imagine in your mind's eye that you have taken that first step and how much better it feels to even be one step closer to that ideal day. So I'll end this guided meditation with some words of encouragement that this future ideal day, whether it's a short path or a long path, does exist, that there are steps that you can absolutely take to get you closer and closer to that place, and that you have everything you need inside of you to take that first step. Whew. All right.
Thank you, Dr. Bailey Bryant. That was awesome. I don't know about you guys, but I definitely needed that meditation this morning, bringing it down a little bit. Dr. Bryant, I would really like to ask, if someone out there is experiencing burnout in their workplace now, what do you think is a good conversation opener for them to talk to their employer about how they need to take steps to be a little bit healthier in their workspace?
Yeah, so I'd say a lot of that probably depends on the relationship you have with your employer. So if you're lucky, you have an employer who truly cares about your well-being and who is flexible and wants to make things better, in which case I would say be transparent. Let them know this is what I'm experiencing. You can even throw some data at them so the Indeed survey is easy to access, and just let them know that burnout is on the rise. The majority of people are experiencing it, including myself, and here are some things that we can do to fix it according to the research. So that can be a slightly less vulnerable way to just show some data to your employer and make it clear that it's good for all of us if we address this. Some of us are lucky enough to have those relationships, though, where you can be very vulnerable and very transparent and say, this is what I'm struggling with and this is what I need. So I would say, consider how safe of a conversation it is for you, and whether you need to lead with a more global conversation about burnout or a more individual one. But my guess is if your employer's been paying attention, they're probably aware that this is a problem. And so bringing some information to them that would be good for them and good for you will hopefully be well received.
Thank you so much. I know that burnout can be a big problem, especially with entrepreneurs and even in corporate life. So be sure that you're taking care of your own health and your mental health and your well-being, because you are the person to advocate for you. Thank you, Dr. Bryant. So next up, we're going to be segueing to a platform that is totally around employee well-being, and really wanted to look into ways that you can work better at work and figure out what personality traits for you can be brought to your workplace to make sure you're living a better life and having a quality time at work. So next up, we're having Kirsten Moorfield, co-founder of Cloverleaf, and she's going to talk a little bit about Cloverleaf and her mission behind that.
All right. I went to college down south in the Bible Belt, and there was this man that came to our campus and went to this super high traffic area where students were walking between classes and started hollering, "You are a sinner. You must repent of your evil ways. The Lord does not hear the prayers of the sinful." And there was this little crowd of students that would always gather around him and just egg him on, just get there to rile him up. So it was totally ineffective. Whatever he was going for wasn't working. But I, for some reason, 21-year-old me, really wanted to have an actual conversation with this man, because I had a little bit of issue with what he was saying, and I wanted to better understand. So I went into this contentious crowd and said, "Excuse me, I have a question. I was just wondering, you don't even read your Bible, do you?" And he just starts hollering at me, "You can't even talk to me about this." And my response was "You didn't even let me finish my sentence. You don't even know what I was going to say. And you should maybe just let me say what I'm going to say here." And that obviously did not work out super well for me. So then I stopped and I said, "We seem to be having a miscommunication here." And y'all, it was magic. He just he actually stopped, slowed down, and let me talk. And then he responded in a calm tone to me. It was a crazy change that happened. And it was not because I was some really genius 21-year-old. It was actually because I had learned that tactic, and it really stood out to me. I had learned that in a workplace communication class talking about conflict at work. And it struck me as very odd, because I thought, grown professionals don't have conflict at work. Why would we be talking about this? But it turns out I was very wrong. Workplace conflict is a common human experience that we are all suffering from. And it's not as contentious or blatantly obvious as that preacher man on campus, 99.99% of the time. It's not that type of a scenario. It's really sneaky. It's really confusing. Sometimes we actually blame it on things like systems and processes, and we don't realize there's a human disconnect happening here. And I believe it's one of the biggest wellness issues we have around isolation, depression, mental health at work. And it's causing mental distraction after work. It's causing tension in our bodies, health issues. And why do I know about this? I know about this because I talk to a lot of people about this specific issue because I'm a co-founder of a company that launched here out of Cincinnati a few years ago called Cloverleaf. What we do is automated coaching based on who you are, how do you do your best work, and the same thing about the people around you. How do you better understand them, partner with them, and resolve conflict and turn tense situations into great situations? Now, when I say automated coaching, most people don't understand what that could look like. So here's an actual legit email that I got emailed to me from my own product, coaching me about myself and about my husband. So I just thought it'd be fun to share that one so you can have an example of what this looks like. And we right now are working with organizations all across the globe, a lot of Fortune 100 companies, a lot of small companies as well. So we're serving the whole gamut. And over 90% of our customers say that we increase the effectiveness of their teams. So why is it so effective? Because I spend a lot of time over the past few years, and my team now is spending a lot of time talking to people about what is success for you at work? What is in your way? What is most important to you? Just these like common workplace questions, and people share a lot with us to help us understand this. And I'm here to talk today about how I see this related to wellness and how everyone is suffering from this and everyone can create a better team culture to improve this. But if that sounds a little too hokey pokey and floofy and kumbaya for you, there's an actual hard business case for what I'm talking about today. And there was a company that's really good at business cases and innovation. It's a global conglomerate that has definitely changed the way your life works. They're called Google. Google did a 3-year study of their highest performing teams. What is it that makes for the most innovative teams? What is it that makes for the teams that bring in the most revenue? What is it that makes for, the fastest, strongest teams in our global organization across cultures, all of that? Is it skill set? Is it past performance reviews? Is it size of team? Is it something that we can measure and formulate into a system and then poof, output like the best teams? And what they found, the common denominator for their highest performing teams was actually not numerical. It's this thing called psychological safety, which is an academic term that means it is safe for people to take risks, admit mistakes, ask questions, and share new ideas. It's safe to have different perspectives without fear of negative consequences or being seen as ignorant, incompetent, negative, or disruptive. Now, those are fighting words right there. Feeling seen as ignorant, incompetent, negative, or disruptive. That's an attack on character. That's making this really personal just because somebody has a different perspective. And I want to camp out on this because if it took a 3-year study in one of the most innovative companies in the world to unearth this, that's because it's not our common experience. Most people subconsciously have a fear of being seen as ignorant, incompetent, negative, or disruptive just for asking questions or just for thinking about things differently than their coworkers, which is creating this tension and this stress that we have in our bodies, right? And so in my interviews, talking to prospects, talking to customers about their work experience, a super clear pattern has emerged to me that I now actually pick up on whenever I even just talk to my friends and family about work. This comes up in almost every conversation I have about work. And on the surface, every single human is experiencing stress, anxiety, confusion, or frustration that is really stemming from something about a relationship or multiple relationships at work. It's around the people. But it's not that preacher man on my campus. It's not people saying, you are a problem, right? It's not that. It's sneaky. It's mysterious. It is beneath the surface. And so here's some of the ways I've heard people talk about it. Resistance. We need to make a change, and I am experiencing a lot of resistance from the other team about this. Now that I'm off that team, I can see that was so dysfunctional. I didn't realize it while I was there, but wow, dysfunctional. That new person who's now joined our team, I see they have unrealistic expectations of what we're capable of here. They dropped the ball. I needed to wait on my deliverable from that person so that I could finish my work, and they dropped the ball, and now it's my neck that's on the line here. This one really just shocks me. The amount of times I hear the word incompetent, it's just shocking to me. Man, we keep hiring temps, and they are so incompetent. After 3 times, I just started to question if she was really competent anymore. She just keeps poking holes in my ideas. Every time I make a suggestion, just poking holes in my ideas. I saw that this was going to be an issue. I knew this 6 months ago. I spoke up. I tried to get people on board, but nobody listens to me. No one listened to me. I mean, he's a good guy, but he's just in over his head. Now, don't get me wrong. I really like her. She's cool, but she is not getting what I'm trying to help her understand here. He's trying really hard, but he's not getting it. These last 3 are so interesting to me because they're hinting at what we all really kind of subconsciously realize is happening beneath the surface, which is that as humans, we want to categorize people as good or bad. Like, you're either all bad or you're all good. It's really confusing that you could be good, but there's this bad thing, right? And so really we recognize subconsciously in these statements of, oh, he's a good guy or I like her, we recognize that what's really happening is we're making character judgments. And this is beneath the surface. When you make a suggestion at work and someone doesn't agree with it, it feels like they're judging your character. Not consciously, but subconsciously. And when you start to have an issue with someone, you're starting to judge their character, or you're worried that you're going to come across as you're judging their character. And I'm here to tell you, most times, 99.9999% of the time, these issues that are happening are truly not personal. We just can't see the objective thing that's underneath it. So let's talk about what are the objective buckets that these tensions can fall into. The first is the easiest to categorize, which is that we have competing priorities. A real classic example here is sales versus product. Sales comes in and says, hey, we got a great new opportunity. I think if we just, did this thing, we could get this new client. Product, I have some questions about that. Have you thought about what would happen in this scenario? And what do you think about, and what if, and then sales immediately starts just getting exhausted and thinking, man, product, so close-minded. I knew this was going to happen. I came ready for this, right? Meanwhile, product is thinking, sales, my gosh, your head is in the clouds. You're not connected to reality here. You're just after that short-term commission. Ooh, that's a character judgment on greed, right? But what's really, really happening is that sales spends their days talking, phone call after phone call with different people, and they understand the market trends. They understand what is needed to take the company to the next level. They see new opportunities, and they are held responsible to bring in the new revenue so that you can get paid, right? Whereas product, their feet are to the fire on actually wowing the customer once they're in. They have to deliver not just what was sold, but a wow factor on top of that. Quality, timeline, budget, all these things that they have to consider so that you don't lose that new client you just sold, right? So what can you do in this kind of a situation? Like the next time you feel tension rising at work, just pause and ask, what is this role's responsibility? It's not even about the person. It's not even about what's Sarah's responsibility. It's what is this role's responsibility? Oh, okay, now I could have a conversation. I know that you're feeling the pressure of the metrics that we put out for sales this quarter. I also know that you've brought up this kind of an opportunity 3 times in the past. I think you're probably picking up on something. I also have seen this fail, and I want to make sure we don't do that so that we serve your customer well. Boom. What a different conversation that begins, right? It's objective. This one, like I said, there's 2 major buckets. This is the easier one to just objectively see because it's kind of externally defined for you. People have a general understanding of role responsibilities, right? The next one is the bigger, sneakier, trickier one to see, and it is that we have cognitive diversity in humanity. People see things differently. We have different ways of approaching problems. We have different strengths, things we're good at, things we're not good at, blind spots, things that are draining to us. And we have different communication styles, personalities, all of that. And this is something that I keep using the word sneaky because it's really sneaky. We don't even realize in ourselves most of the time that what we're defaulting to and what we're good at. And then we don't even therefore realize because of that, we're starting to think somebody who's doing something different is incompetent, and we're starting to question them. It's all subconscious. So I'm going to pull out a couple of big buckets that these differences often fall into to help you potentially see how this might be playing out in your life. Action-oriented versus analytical. Now, this is a spectrum. You're going to fall on different parts of the spectrum depending on how much sleep you got. For women, the time of month, your body chemistry. Like you can change, but we all actually have like a default gut reaction, like where we typically go to on this spectrum. Someone who's action-oriented is going to talk more, is going to make faster decisions, is going to keep us moving, right? Someone who's analytical is going to be sitting back, listening, waiting to take in lots of data points because they want to make sure we don't miss an important perspective here and wants more time before we make decisions. So how this plays out in a meeting, action-oriented folks are talking. All right, anyone else have okay, great. Well, we'll just make this decision and here we go. Analytical folks are like, oh my gosh, what a steamroller. I tried to speak up and I got cut off, and I have some concerns and I have some questions, but you know what? Decision was made, and that was a half-an-hour meeting, and we are done here. I am stressed out and concerned. Action-oriented people even, they think, my goodness, that person did not seem engaged. I don't know if they care. Not sure they're paying attention here. But that's not what's happening. It's the fact that if you could actually see maybe someone is just operating in a different strength than you could find a better way to partner. Imagine if the action-oriented people knew this about themselves and stopped and said, you know what? Anybody have questions? And leave a good 30 seconds for people to actually think before they speak up. That would change so much, right? But action-oriented people think it doesn't take 30 seconds to come up with something to talk about. But some folks need more time to think. So I also hope you see we need both of these. We need people pulling us forward, and we need people making sure that we're not missing important things, which brings us to our second bucket. Big picture thinkers versus detail-oriented people. Big picture thinkers are thinking about the future and themes, like, oh, the market opportunity is this way, right? Detail-oriented people are thinking about what happened yesterday, what happened the past 3 years, what happened in the past that's informing where we're going, and what can we constantly be gleaning from that in very specifics that can make sure we're successful here. I always hear stories like, I saw a problem, I worked real hard on a solution, I was pitching it to the team, and somebody, that same one, just like started asking questions, like so many questions, and I just felt the doubt. The doubt just entered the room and influenced everybody else there, and I feel exhausted and totally defeated now. And what happened was, it was a big picture thinker pitching something, and a detail-oriented person asking questions, and you feel like they don't like my idea, they don't like me, but really it could be that detail-oriented person thinks it's a fantastic idea. They just want to understand how it's going to work, and they're going to ask a bunch of questions, right? Last bucket that I'll talk about, there's really infinite, but the last one I'll talk about is values-driven versus logic-driven. So values-driven people often talk in, I feel overwhelmed, I feel excited, I feel like this is a good opportunity. Logic-driven people, it's think. I think, 1 + 1 = 2, and I think we're going to do this. I'm more values-driven. My co-founder is more logic-driven. And a few years ago, I was feeling very overwhelmed. I had 4 roles I was playing, and one of them I was totally dropping the ball. And I went to him and I said, you know what, Darren? I'm feeling overwhelmed. I am not able to cover this general thematic area of customer success, and I'm concerned about our success as a company. If we don't take care of this, I think we need to hire for customer success. Darren responds, I think we need to think about how we're prioritizing. Maybe you could just move some things around, reprioritize, and blah, blah, blah. I was so frustrated. I was stressed, y'all. I was losing sleep. I was like, why can't I communicate this effectively? What's wrong with me? Why isn't Darren listening? Just tension, right? And Cloverleaf emailed me a tip that said, hey, try to persuade Darren with facts and bullet points. And I was like, duh, I freaking invented this thing. Like, I should think this way, right? But it's so unnatural. And so I go into a meeting with Darren. I'm like, hey, Darren, here's the things I'm getting to. The general things I'm doing really well at. Here's the things I'm doing, like, bullet points, like, not so great at. And then here's the stuff that's like, it's just not even happening. What do you think we should do here? And he looks at the list and he goes, I think we should hire for customer success. And I was like, hallelujah, there you go. So, but it was that we just were approaching the same thing with a different way of communicating because we think differently, because we have cognitive diversity. And I hope you see in this, we need this. And we all have it hidden beneath the surface at our workplaces. Like, we have this cognitive diversity. We just don't know it's there, and we don't know how it's influencing tensions, but we also don't know its potential to release us, to do better work, to be a psychologically safe, high-performing team where we're more successful individually and collectively. So what can you do? What you going to do to influence this? Whether you're a single founder on your own and your team is 1099s and potential new customers and investors you're pitching, or you're an entry-level employee at P&G, at a really large organization. What can you do to help influence this? There's a couple of practical things you can do. First of all, talk positively about differences. Get to know, what are the differences of you and the people that you're working with? One of the easiest ways you can do this, by the way, to get to know these differences is go and take an assessment. Go take a behavioral assessment, a strengths assessment. You can find them for free online. You can take free ones on Cloverleaf. They're real easy to come by. Just Google it. And you'll be able to see, oh my goodness, that person is a critical thinker. And I am an emotional processor. That's interesting. What's the difference there? And then you'll start to realize, you know what? I'm so glad you're questioning these critical details because I need that help, right? And then you can talk positively. Talk open in your teams. Hey, I'm so glad you're different than me. I don't think that way. I actually find that very exhausting. Thank you so much for covering that gap, right? The next thing you can do, really simple, take an active listening training, or just go Google it and read about active listening tactics. You're going to read it and you're going to be like, yeah, duh. And then you're going to go to do it and you're going to say, wow, this is super uncomfortable and really unnatural. And then you're going to do it and then you're going to say, oh my goodness, I just learned so much I would not have otherwise learned. So active listening sounds really obvious, very unnatural. Go learn more about it. The next thing is Amy Edmondson has a TEDx talk called Building a Psychologically Safe Workplace. Super fantastic. It's 10 minutes. It's short. It's not a long commitment. Watch it with your team and talk, hey, how are we doing on this? And how might we do better on, become more psychologically safe? When have you felt like it's not safe to have a different perspective? That kind of stuff. Have just an open conversation with your team. I can't not mention Cloverleaf because literally I know this problem because I talk to people so that I can build the product that helps solve this problem. So I'll just real quick say, you can come on Cloverleaf, take free assessments, get a free team dashboard, see where you are. Oh, I'm here and my coworker's over there. Of course we're different, right? And you can experience team coaching, automated team coaching. You can get a 2-week free trial and get it pushed into your inbox. Hey, you're good at this, they're good at this, try these tactics with each other, right? You can experience that. Just go to cloverleaf.me, sign up for a free trial. And then the last thing I'd say is model this. It is unnatural in our culture for somebody to actually view differences as valuable. We don't listen to each other very much, and we definitely don't think, that was a different perspective. Tell me more. I'm really interested, right? We have to defend ourselves. We have to prove ourselves. And so when you start to actually get curious about this, slow down, and value the differences, you're going to stand out. Even if this is your first week on the job, you're going to stand out and start to influence a change in the culture. Even if you're a solo founder, and this is just how you approach your investor conversations or your, potential new customer conversations, it will be noted. It will stand out. And it will start to influence the culture, and it'll start to let everyone chill out a little bit more and have a higher sense of well-being. And if you remember nothing from this talk except for my crazy preacher man story, just remember next time you feel tension rising, don't say you, say we. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Kirsten. I don't know if you guys are convinced to get Cloverleaf, but I sure am. I'd love to know, Kirsten, what was that aha moment for you and Darren when you guys were thinking about starting a company? What really drove home this idea of Cloverleaf for you guys?
Oh, that's such a good question. So we actually started this company thinking that we were going to do recruiting. Like we had worked in this great company called Epifio, had an awesome culture, and some people didn't fit. And we thought, you could use personality assessments to show someone like you're really going to enjoy this team you're about to work with, or you might not enjoy it. And a lot of customer interviews, MVP, and investor pitches later, we realized, adding someone to a dysfunctional team doesn't help very much. Let's try to flip the team. And people started telling us, I love your team building software. And so we thought, that's really interesting. So yeah, there was not the one moment where we suddenly knew we were going to do automated coaching. It was a journey of listening to the market.
And I think that's a characteristic of a great startup company is that pivot, that pivot from that initial idea to something that's really going to change the world, really, in the workplace.
Yep.
Thank you so much. Next up, we have a short message from one of StartupCincy sponsors, Pieces, and we're going to give you a short little glimpse of their platform. Welcome back, guys. We have a little bit of an impromptu panel here. We get to ask our awesome speakers some more questions and dive a little bit deeper. So first up, you guys all touched on stress and how that can greatly impact your mental and physical health. What's your advice on ways to cut down on stress at work and home?
This is kind of my jam. Okay, so there are some quick things that you can do to just try to trigger that parasympathetic nervous system. And if you're not into that language, it's just trying to get yourself to relax. And so some deep breathing, where you just try to extend the exhale a little bit longer than the inhale, or taking a quick mental break, and maybe you scroll through some pictures on your phone that make you happy and transport you somewhere else, or even a 5-10 minute walk. You're going to get more bang for your buck if you dose out happy little things throughout your day instead of taking a couple of hours to do one big thing. So just little breaks to do pleasant stuff, distracting stuff, relaxing stuff will go a long way.
I took a deep breath when you said that. I was like, oh, that sounds great. Obviously, what I just talked about, like, solving workplace tensions. But you know what? This one's just total Kirsten's opinion here. Turn off your freaking notifications, man. Like, notifications are like the number one stressor I feel of our day. So, like, just, I don't know, maybe cancel all your social media accounts too. That might help. And that's just my opinion.
Cancel the social media. I think that's a tough one. I have a few other ideas. So I think that for me, a lot of it starts with empathy too. I know that for me, I take a lot of things very personally, even if they have nothing to do with me. And I found that I'm obviously a huge fan of Cloverleaf, and that type of really understanding yourself before you can even understand others and engage. At the foundation of that, if you remember that what they think of you is none of your business, and what you think of them and their perception of you, actually probably through thin slicing and a lot of the things that we know, just the way our brains are wired, that it's actually really nothing you can do about it. So I find myself kind of unhinging myself from people's expectations a lot, which I think has really released me, especially as being a female founder.
I'll add one thing. I think it would be changing kind of your culture of health and really addressing that in every part of your life. So often we focus on our like a work life and then home stress or vice versa. So it's like really looking at the full scope of everything you do, even your friends and family. Like sometimes that notification thing, some calls you don't want to answer because you're like, you're going to stress me out. So I think that's another thing to add, just really changing the whole culture of all of that.
I hope you guys at home are taking notes. These are all very important things. So we're all in the health field, and for me personally, working at a health innovation accelerator, I've found like true joy in helping these health innovation ideas grow and become a real company and a real solution to really help these growing problems we have around the world. I would like to know for you guys personally, what drove you guys to, start a business or enter a career in the health field?
I can start. For me, I am the most health averse person, if that makes sense. I don't like going to the doctor. I pass out when I get shots. Still, I'm a grown woman, and that happens. But I think that for me, I realized that I was my consumer, and I realized that there's so many amazing people out there that I didn't really understand why there weren't more women in leadership and more women starting companies. And I've always been a connector and realized that I can really catalyze people and their potential, and using that gift to allow me to pour into other people felt like a natural fit. It really came out of just honestly need and necessity and such congruence with my values that I didn't really have another choice. I guess that maybe that's it too. And I think that there's just a piece, I think, in all of us that we all kind of see this, like we don't really ask for this. Would we have picked a different, easier way? I don't know. I sometimes wish for that, but I don't think I would have.
I can go. I would say it started off, I thought I was actually going to be a physician. I realized I wasn't very good at blood and all of that. So I was like, maybe this isn't for me. And found public health and realized, actually, I thought I was going to work globally and actually work with some of the same issues that impact us here today, actually around the world. And it was actually through study abroad and actually experiencing other cultures where I realized I didn't need to go anywhere else, that my community was suffering from the same complications and things of that nature that was happening around the world. And that's really where the passion kind of really blossomed. It was like, there's so much work to be done here in my own community, and I wanted to be a part of that.
For me, I just saw the generation ahead of me have a really negative view of work, and that influenced like coming home and binging on Netflix type of like check out. Like people are checked out and they're stressed, and like they don't understand what's happening that's making them so frustrated, and so they just get jaded and kind of turn off a little, right? Like that's why you've probably heard the Gallup stat for like as long as they've been measuring it, 70% of the US workforce is disengaged at work, which means we're not bringing our best selves. We're not safe to bring our whole selves. And so we're turning off, we're shutting down. And that I personally was really excited about, or really passionate about that, because I saw what it was doing outside of work. It makes parents come home and just be like, oh, let's get through dinner because I got to check my email after you're in bed, kids. And like, it makes us not interact with the cashier as much when we're checking out at the grocery, like all of that. It just like, it's like dumbing down society. And I truly believe if you can teach people at work what is energizing to them, what they're good at, where they can bring value, and then you can help them see that in the people around them, you're going to flip society. Not only are teams going to become more productive and like figure out how to get plastic out of the oceans and solve cancer and all of that kind of stuff, like people are just going to be happier and more relationally rich because we're not afraid of people disagreeing with us. We're actually able to be open-minded and curious about that. OMG, what would that change about politics, y'all? Like that, it would just flip everything.
I feel like I should add to my presentation that one thing you can do for burnout is get Cloverleaf. Because it might make your work stress significantly less. So what attracted me to create a startup was kind of similar to what you said, is that I wanted a product that would solve the problem that I had. I believed that therapy was incredibly helpful. I'd had wonderful experiences with therapists in the past. And when I went to try to find one for myself, being someone who is in the field and knows the people and knows the jargon, I struggled to find somebody who was a good fit. So I thought, okay, what would I want as a client? And then as a therapist, what would I want as far as a referral system? And so I just built what was missing.
Awesome. She built what was missing. At SoCap, we love to say, find a problem that breaks your heart and build a company around it. And I feel like these founders on this stage are like true examples of that. I would love to know if you guys have any questions for each other. I know we're all in the same field and we've mingled and mixed on different occasions, but like, what questions do you guys have for each other?
I have a lot of questions. So I always think about this with being female founders, and maybe we'll get a little like, did you ever experience a moment where you were in a moment where you were so passionate about it and you wanted to move forward, but you experienced burnout yourself? Because I know that was my catalyst, but even along my entrepreneur journey, I sometimes will go to bed and I'm like, what am I doing? And then I wake up and I'm like, this is why. I get out of bed in the morning because I know I'm going to solve that. I'm just really curious if you guys had like one of those moments that you would want to share.
Okay, so I've had like 5 of those moments. Yeah. So my only burnout was not just the one that I shared in my presentation, but I also hit the wall pretty hard this past summer. And I think that a thing that made me more vulnerable, which I imagine is true for pretty much most of us, is COVID and losing some of our social outlets and just our everything being shaken up. For some of us in some good ways, but for a lot of us in a whole lot of bad ways. Mm-hmm. And so I started to again feel that just sluggishness and losing my creativity. And thankfully, being an entrepreneur, I was then able to take some time off, which was awesome. But I took a week off, which was long enough for me to realize that I needed way more than a week off. So then a couple months later, because I'm a planner, I planned 2 weeks off. And that felt like that was enough time for me to kind of get my feet back underneath me and get excited again. And then I was able to hit the ground running. But yeah, the burnout doesn't stop just when you're the one in charge.
No, I really experienced the year of 2017. Like it was not a moment, it was a long time. And it was when we had an MVP. Darren and I were full-time working on Cloverleaf. We went through Ocean Accelerator, which was super helpful. And we started raising capital, which is so hard. Like it is, people say they're early stage investors and they mean when you're at like 1 million ARR, which is great. Great. But like, it's a different kind of early stage than like 3,000 MRR, if even. You know, like it just was so hard to be two people who were doing product, dev, sales, customer success, and investor relations, and driving all over Indiana, Kentucky, Ohio, trying to get out to investors in other places. And I had a young kid at the time. He turned 2 that year. I had 2 miscarriages that year, and my car stopped working. I had no income. Why did my car just literally stop working and total itself for no reason? Like, there was just hard thing after hard thing. And Darren, my co-founder, also had just hard things happen. I don't know, like, since then we haven't had these external hard things happen. So it was hard to start the business. Personal life got really hard. Health was hard. Like, just devastating things happening. And like, it's so hard because especially at that stage, if you stop working, that means the company stops. And so like, had to keep pushing. And I would say like, saving grace of that year was that we got through it and that I had my co-founder. I mean, like, I really don't have great advice. Like, it sucked. It was hard. It did.
I'll just add, I think the hardest thing for me is often I'm working on issues that are so large. So I'm often working in issues like social determinants of health, you know, food insecurity and housing and transportation and all of those things impacting our health. So what keeps me motivated, and I wouldn't say I'm not burnt out, it's just hard, but I realize I may not see the impact of this in my lifetime, but all I want to do is make sure that for my hypothetical children that may happen in the future, get to see that outcome, right? So they have access to health care, they have access to healthy food in the community in which they live, transportation, housing, all of those things. So even though I can't see the tangible goal at the end, it's just that passion that wakes me up every morning that, like, if I don't do it, then who will? And how do we continue that work?
Such a great question.
Just great.
Thank you so much for that. I think you all are amazing. As we wrap up, I would love to know if you have any final words, if you want to probe your business a little bit, if you have any lasting words for the audience.
Sure, I can. Go to cloverleaf.me, sign up for a free trial. I already said that one, so there you go. But also, I personally, while I have a mic, I just want to encourage people who are thinking about starting a business to go for it. I told you my horrible year. It didn't just end that year. There's all kinds of troubles. What makes a business happen is that you do it and you don't give up. So I just really hope that our stories can be encouraging to people to take the leap and stay committed. And then if you also know people who are dreaming of starting a business, encourage their dreams and don't talk them down. Like, be a good support system, because it takes a village and we really need a support system.
Well, I would say if anybody is interested in having conversations about mental health, about burnout, about finding a therapist, you can always check out our website at healthmatch360.com. We're still in development, so it's not live quite yet, but you can sign up for our wait list. Or just find me on LinkedIn. I'm happy to connect with anybody and everybody. Just linkedin.com/Dr. Bailey Bryant.
Guess I'll go. So I would say, please take our survey. If you're not a woman, then give it to a woman in your life. So that would be first. Take our reproductive health survey. If you didn't get the link earlier because you're just tuning in, if you Google American Heart Association in Cincinnati, then you'll get to our page. If you go to heart.org, it'll be a lot of information that you should look at. But if you go to that page, you'll be actually able to see the survey. And then, yes, connect with me at Dr. Angelica Hardy on LinkedIn, and just really focus on your passion. If that's health, you know, I would love that. But really focus on your passion and how we can help our community thrive.
And I'll just say we are always looking for partners to help support their employees as well as people looking to invest in their whole self-wellness. So you can check us out at shop.wisewellnessskill.com if you are interested in taking that free 100-point wellness assessment powered by Cloverleaf. And you can also, if you are a corporate executive or someone looking to invest in your teams, you can check out wisewellnessskill.com. We are just really excited to continue to grow and scale.
Thank you so much, guys. I'd be remiss if I don't mention Yama Health. Please check out his website as well, focusing on matching doctors to patients. Thank you guys so much. Next up, we're going to have a awesome spoken word piece by Miriam Weber. Enjoy.
They say it takes a village to raise a child who encompasses all that is great. And from miles away, one could follow the smell of this collective cauldron that was conjuring up the savory pursuit of dreams. Billowing spices from all different walks of life, 5 years today, that cauldron of dreams, we still celebrate. And there's no secret recipe needed to turn ice-cold apprehension into overflowing, boiling pots of faith, the kind of faith that the child puts into their first step. Step by step, we make way to the front window, beckoning the early morning's breeze, and chance my dreams, my wildest fantasies, commemorate with me in glory that precious first step, the vision we bred courage for, the medley we gave life to, my village and me. Inventing the future, conflating responsibility and fluidity, I cannot help but take notice that maybe this rain cloud above my head arrives in peace, and all of its thunderbolts and lightning beats, that these tears of frustration and these cries of release, inventing the future with only the now to see. 5 years ago, a fearless soul asked themselves, where do I begin this journey? And even before the morning sun could greet the fearless iris, who will wake up this morning ready to do the thing, inside a sleeping soul lies a child, curating the kind of energy that sings. No body, nowhere, not near, not there, could ever run as fast enough to catch the rear end of a roaring entrepreneur's tail. And even if the world around them did not feel real or safe, true kinship prevails in the name of our real life's visions, like a leaping frog, hopping and skipping, racing, weaving in and out of the bayou of the StartupCincy Village Valley. Your heart can never thank you enough for the kind of determination it takes to stay here long enough to witness year 5's season finale. Because there are places we go in spaces we would never dare to exist in. The sum of our parts are always in fruition. In this pursuit of happiness, I declare a salute to a certain willingness to dare and dream of a gift for myself, by myself, mapping miles of mountains for generations to revere, bestowing upon these feet the direction towards the StartupCincy Village collection. May the hustle of our dreams never be lost. May we stand tall in our true, honest reflection. We say, when we are gone, our stories will remain through the projects we create, the tales we tell about the memories we made. Cheers to 5 years of moving, shaking, and producing, and taking one's life into their own fate. Thanks.